This is your brain. A well-composed, decently full, well-running object. It can store millions of facts, thoughts, and memories all within just a few small passageways. It can create synapses within a few seconds, giving you thoughts. It takes hundreds of receptors and nerve endings to touch in order for you to simply snap your fingers. The brain is a precious thing. We must take care of it in order for it to continue running properly. The care for our brain begins when we are children. Our parents are gentle with us when we are babies. They nurture us, console us, and give us crucial knowledge. When we are children, they teach us right from wrong. They teach us how to act in public. They teach us manners and new things and even help us with school, so that when we're adults and we're thrown into the real world, even when it shakes us up, the original knowledge that they gave us acts as a padding around us, so that our minds are continued to be protected. Now, this is a brain. It's the brain of a small child in what they know as a stable environment. This brain is still forming just as the other one was. But this brain is a little different. Instead of getting the crucial knowledge that it needs, this brain is thrown head first into something terrible. So that when it's adult, it misses the padding, and when the world shakes it up, it becomes mush. This is your brain in trauma. When children undergo trauma, their brains don't work like they should. They start out with a good, clean brain, then bam, something happens. They end up getting into trauma. They have barriers put up all over their brain. They become defensive, ready for another bout of trauma whenever it may come. The world forces them to be thrown into what they should be doing. Even though they have so many unsolved problems, they are still thrown into the world. They can make it seem as though they have it all together, as though they are not affected by the tumultuous chaos going on inside their brains, behind the walls they have put up. And if you think that is the worst part, imagine feeling all of these things I just talked about with an ACT. Imagine this with a midterm. Imagine this with learning your ABCs. These walls just don't block out the bad things. They unknowingly block out the good. These barriers block against love, learning, and a future. They stop absorbing. This is a survival brain. The Muslim priest Shafi once said it best: your body can handle almost anything, but it's your mind that you must protect. Between the ages of infancy and 5, a human's brain is its most vulnerable. It's soft and pliable and ready to learn. These are the formative years. During this time, it is so important for the brain to get all of the necessities it needs in order to function properly as an adult. However, when a child is involved in trauma, they develop a survival brain. In these formative years, instead of their brains continuing to be a soft and pliable thing, they grow hard. They turn to stone in an attempt to block out all the trauma, to block out the memories, the pain, and the past. But it also blocks out the present, causing their brains to become hard. They don't absorb anymore. Contrary to what people think, trauma comes in all different packages. Trauma can be losing a loved one, getting into a car crash, being removed from their parents, even losing a pet. Trauma also presents itself different in each child. In some, it is a very obvious difference from their former self, but in others, it's a very small change. Maybe they're a little more reserved than they used to be, or maybe they're more sensitive to words, or maybe they seem to be less focused on their lessons than before. A common problem with most children that have a survival brain is seemingly being unfocused. They seem to be daydreaming or losing focus in what is being taught. Most people assume they are daydreaming, so they are treated just as any other student would be. However, they are not any other student, and they are not daydreaming. The brain is like a circuit board. There are wires that have to connect in order for it to function to happen. If the circuit board is continuing to receive connections, it's eventually going to overload. And when it overloads, the circuit board stops working. That is how survival brains work. With all of the trauma and stress that the child is already under, just adding a little bit of something new can send their brains to short circuit and freeze up. Students with a survival brain are often treated as a regular student. They sit through classes, take notes, and do all of the things that a typical child their age does. But they struggle to grasp true knowledge in a room full of 50 people. They're grasping at straws to comprehend a fast-moving lesson because their minds have put up barriers that most children don't have. These walls that they have to block out the past are unknowingly blocking out the future. They just aren't geared to learn that way. For educators, it is crucial to fully understand how to handle survival brains. However, it's actually handled in a much calmer way than people assume. When a child has built a survival brain, there are 3 aspects of taking it down. It is so important for a child that has been involved with trauma to have one-on-one contact with their provider. When a child spends one-on-one contact with an adult doing educational work or games, it gives that child the ability to absorb much easier when they can take it at their own pace, ask their own questions, and learn through methods that work specifically for them. Another method for assisting in trauma learning is providing choices for your student. Typically, when a child is involved in trauma, they feel as though they are not in control. They subconsciously feel like every choice has been made for them, and they are constantly in the will of another higher power. They are told what pencil to use, where to sit, and what color notebook to write in school. This can sometimes force them to go back into that traumatic mindset. However, when they are given choices for themselves, it makes them feel as though they're subconsciously in control of their situation, which in turn helps to calm them down and make their brains far more susceptible to knowledge. Sometimes educators make the mistake of giving them too many choices. Too many choices can overload their systems, just like the circuit board. But small choices can aid in their learning process, such as choosing what color pencil to use or choosing where to sit. These small changes impact so many things. The final key part of educating trauma victims really has nothing to do with the child at all. It has to do with the educator. Obtaining a mindset for educating a trauma victim is one of the most crucial factors. The educator cannot just assume that this child is like any other. Their mind works in a far different way than that of their peers. A survival brain needs the right kind of guidance. It needs a gentle, understanding, and firm hand to help it. As an educator, it is important that you are able to handle a child with a survival brain. It takes patience, compassion, understanding, and the greatest of all those, love. Even though the child has been removed from the trauma, it takes years for the effects to lessen, and in some, it never truly does. It takes effort, compassion, and love to truly grasp at the sponge and help it to begin to reabsorb. With time, patience, and love, the walls will shake, they will break, and eventually they will come down, so that the sponge can truly absorb all that it needs, and eventually there will no longer be a survival brain.